You're watching and I disappeared on you. I'm sorry. I'm trying again. So this is the second coming of Christ, the resurrection of the Christ within you, a revelatory commentary on the teachings of Jesus the Christ by Yoganonda. So Yoganonda is a yogi, and I believe he is said to have a similar or same lineage as Jesus. Jesus was thought to have traveled to India and studied with yogis. And so this is his take and his breakdown on the Gospels. And there are 2 books in this series, 2 volumes. And there's 75 discourses. I already read the first one. These can be taken on their own. You don't have to read them in any order. So it doesn't matter if you haven't heard the first 43. I'm on 44. And this one is called The Signs of the Times. Jesus' works and words in testimony of his special dispensation. Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. But he answered and said unto them, Why do ye also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? For God commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, Whoever shall say to his father or mother, It is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father or mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of God of none effect by your tradition. Ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Matthew 15, verses 1 through 9. Okay. A common fault in the structure of religion, East and West, is the subordination of the spirit of divine principles by the expediency of man-made traditions of rules and rites. Traditionalists among the ancient Hebrews enlarged their code governing offerings to God, Korban, to permit a man who promised to give his earthly goods to the service of the temple. I skipped a sentence there, I'm sorry. Let me try this again. Traditionalists among the ancient Hebrews enlarged their code governing offerings to God. Korban, the spirit of man who promised to give his earthly goods to the service of the temple to thereby disavow his duty to support his parents, even though he might have made the promise of this gift to God in a fit of anger against his parents or with otherwise wicked or selfish intentions. By merely declaring Korban regarding any of his material property, he could become free from any inconvenient obligation to his parents that was otherwise demanded by law, albeit they might be destitute, and his withheld goods might never be utilized for the temple. Resorting to this perversion of Korban law made by man amounted to disobedience to the 5th commandment of God. Jesus, by his criticism, pointed out how the adoption of this degenerate ceremonial law had led to the violation of divine law. Tell me, why are you so conscientious in upholding your localized customs and yet flaunt God's commandments? Which is a greater sin, to ignore tradition and yet be faithful to God's commandments, or to denigrate God's commandments for your own useful purposes under the auspices of religious custom? You know full well that in order to outwardly appear holy, you engage in your elaborate traditions and utterly reject the commandments of God when an adaptation is more self-serving. God vibrated his law and wish through prophet Moses' intuition. Honor your father and mother with the devotion your hearts, as they are the divine instruments of your creation. And he that curseth, he who uses vile language or thinks evil thoughts or commits abuses against father or mother, let him die the death. That is, let him be remorseful with the agony as intense as death. And let him change himself and his consciousness, even as one is changed in death. Parents are the physical instruments of God who manifests on earth as the parental love that creates and protects the child. Therefore, an offspring who blasphemes against his parents blasphemes against God. Jesus reviled the Pharisees for having made a law that enabled a man to be free from his parental obligations, even in instances detrimental to them. It sounds a lot how we like to throw people away in nursing homes, right? O ye hypocrites, who are outwardly holy and inwardly wicked. How fittingly Isaiah prophesied about you after feeling these truths from his consciousness of the intelligent cosmic vibration of God's thoughts. Indeed, he prophesied correctly about the nature of those who come to masters with sweet language and respectful utterances, but with hearts sunk deep in the depths of insincerity. In vain do such men worship God, since they teach for doctrines the commandments of men in preference to the commandments of God. You have laid aside at your convenience the laws of God for perfect living as revealed through the prophets, and have clung to useless traditions of men, such as your elaborate rituals of hand-washing, for the non-observance of which you scorn my disciples. It is better that you should cleanse your inner selves by following God's purifying laws of righteousness, as revealed through the seers, rather than indulging so fervently in the external pseudo-purification, traditional customs that produce no lasting spiritual results. Observance of man-made customs does not in itself bring one closer to God. One should observe normal hygiene, moral behavior, and a reverent decorum in worship. But when setting aside time for God, elaborate preparations for worship by punctilious attention to prescribed rules and preliminary rituals may leave little or no time or desire for the quiet interiorization of deep meditation and divine communion. External observances are intended to engage the mind so that it is cleansed of worldly thoughts. But meditation itself is the true purifier of man's being that makes his consciousness receptive to divine contact. Outward ritual cannot destroy ignorance because they are not mutually contradictory, wrote Swami Shankara. Realized knowledge alone destroys ignorance. And he called the multitude and saying to them, hear and understand, not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth. This defileth a man. Matthew 15, verses 10 through 11. Lend me your attention, all of you, and by tuning your attention with the God wisdom in me, try to understand. Neither a person's omission of some outer man-made custom, nor any vile condition in which he lives, has inherent power to taint his inner being. It is the experiences and thoughts that are allowed to gain foothold in one's mind and feelings and saturate his consciousness with evil, and then come forth as evil desires and actions that desecrate him. If any man has ears to understand, let him hear and understand. Jesus defends the action of his disciples of partaking of food without observing the ritual washing of hands, as having no ill effect on the purity of their hearts and souls. The Pharisees and scribes who religiously practice outward customs without corresponding inner efforts at godliness gain nothing more than a hypocritical pretense of spirituality. Jesus sought to convey the understanding that no matter what one's outer environment, good or bad, nothing from without a man affects him as surely as the good or bad in his own heart. A strongly virtuous person in a bad environment usually remains good, and an entrenched wicked person in a good environment is likely to remain evil. This does not mean that environment has no influence on man. Its effect requires repeated remedial acts of will. Nevertheless, Jesus emphasizes that it is the inner environment of man that is of primary importance. My master, Sri Yukteswari, used to remind me, always be watchful of your company, the company of your friends and the company of your thoughts. A person who hosts evil thoughts is in evil company. But even if one is surrounded by ungodly associates, yet holds the mind to good and positive thoughts, that evil influence is powerless to affect him. Thus, one's primary aim should be to establish virtue firmly within his heart and mind. To think and feel goodness is a powerful force that will attract a good environment and produce a natural, unpracticed spiritual behavior. By contrast, one whose emphasis is on adherence to prescribed outer customs, with no care taken to root out evil from his inner self, remains encircled by his company of evil thoughts and propensities, inevitably unable to thwart their insistence to express outwardly their deleterious nature. The things which come out of him, it is that defiles a man. A person should be judged not by his actions alone, but according to the springs or motives of his actions. It is the evil motive of a man that actuates the iniquity coming out of him, nothing else. Of course, there are some evil committed by children through imitation, or by the mentally ill, devoid of any power of reason, in which case they cannot be held responsible. But when a child or an adult does evil through his own innate motivation or desire, he is defiled thereby, and that action portends an increasingly evil disposition. Then came his disciples and said unto him, Knoweth thou that the Pharisees were offended after they heard this saying? But he answered and said, Every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be uprooted. Let him alone. They be blind leaders of the blind, and blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Matthew 15, verses 12 through 14. Jesus answered indignation with indignation. The obtuseness of the Pharisees made them incapable of accepting the truth of his words. Every plant of imperfect human rule of conduct that man has expediently cultivated in the soil of tradition will in time be found to be a weed, useless to mankind. Hence it shall be destroyed by the cosmic law. All God-made eternal rules of life that the prophets have declared through their cosmic consciousness as necessary to mankind will endure to the end. Leave the Pharisees and their acolytes in their much-loved attachment to their self-created darkness. If the spiritually blind lead people who are also blind with ignorance, together they must fall into the ditch of error with its consequential miseries. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Declare unto us this parable. And Jesus said, Are ye also yet without understanding? Do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly, and is cast out into the draught? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceedeth evil thoughts, murder, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, and blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man. Matthew 15, verses 15 through 20. O my true disciples, are you also without divine understanding? Do you not comprehend that just as in Gested food affects only the body, not the inner being of man. So external outward customs and rites, observed or non-observed, neither exalt nor spoil one's spirit. His character is revealed by what proceeds from the feelings he nurtures in his heart. According to the great sage Pantajali, the feelings of the heart, chitta, are responsible for all of our entanglements in earthly lives. A man of little understanding blames God for the ills and evils into which he is born, but the scriptures of India explain wherein lies the real responsibility. Souls are sent on earth as perfect images of God to be entertained there, to witness and experience the wonders of creation with the attitude of a divine being. But when man subverts his transcendent soul nature with egoistic involvement of the feelings of his heart in likes and dislikes, indiscriminate attractions and repulsions about material things and experiences, those distortions of consciousness become insidious entanglements that make him part of, rather than being apart from, delusion. Accruing in his consciousness lifetime after lifetime the desires, attachments, and tendencies of the likes and dislikes in his feelings compel him to reincarnate in a physical body that has been accustomed by his own design. If these proclivities are evil, they will surely proceed from the feelings of the heart into actions that defile man's innate nobility. That is why Jesus emphasized the difference between external and internal methods of purifying the heart. Out of the evil karmic tendencies stored up in the heart of men, chitta or feeling, all evil thoughts and actions spring. Adulterous lust and adulterous actions, sexual temptations and fornications, murderous inclinations and murderous actions, thievish thoughts and thieving actions, covetous thoughts and covetous actions, penchant for lying about others and the act of bearing false witness, desires to deceive and deceitful actions, lascivious thoughts and lascivious actions, power to inflict harm by the evil eye and use of that power, impulses to curse and acts of cursing, thoughts of blasphemy and blasphemous actions, feelings of pride and boastful actions, and all foolishness, real foolishness, are the offspring of the wicked tendencies stored up in the heart of man through his ignorant actions of this life and past existences. All these evil tendencies, if not curtailed and spiritually sublimated, defile man with multiform miseries. Evil thoughts are a smokescreen of ignorance that hides from the conscious mind the purity and everlasting joy of the soul. One who looks at life through this pollution of feeling is unable to perceive the subtle beauty of the image of God hidden within him. Living in this darkness, man makes himself wholly vulnerable to all manner of delusive afflictions, physical, mental, and spiritual. One who ennobles and beautifies his inner feeling with bright and cheerful thoughts and spiritual aspirations, and most important, who performs daily the highest purification, rite of cleansing, the consciousness and divine wisdom through meditation, finds that through the transparency of his inner luminous living, all the exultant excellence of his God-reflecting soul pours forth and shines into his conscious mind. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 15:21-24. From time to time, the Heavenly Father sends an emissary to minister to a particular community, race, or nation of people in whom he can rekindle the flame of truth and open forgotten portals of salvation. Although my teachings are universal and will be applicable and useful to all lives on earth at all times, still I am not sent for all at the present moment, as I have been especially ordained by the Heavenly Father to act as the spiritual shepherd to the bewildered sheep or spiritual seekers belonging to the house of Israel. The Israelites once were deeply virtuous, as seen in their prophets. They accumulated power for their good karma, sent out a silent call to the Heavenly Father. In response to that call, He has sent me in this cycle as the promised Savior to the Israelites. Jesus' mission was one of world significance. But it is not surprising that since He had only the short span of 3 years to establish the influence of His life and teachings, He concentrated the whole of His power in one relatively limited locale and people. I am sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This is where the stage had been set for the beginning of His world ministry. The coming of one such as He had been prophesied in the Hebrew Scriptures, a Messiah, a man of Nazareth, born in Bethlehem. Further, He was the lineage of the Old Testament Hebraic prophets in His life, as Elisha, disciple of Elijah. Perhaps most significantly, of the civilizations of the world in the times of Jesus, the doctrines of the Hebrew nation, with the exception of India, constituted the only monotheistic religious tradition espousing God as one supreme spirit. The territories bordering the land of Jesus' birth, as also the Roman Empire that conquered and ruled in Israel, were polytheistic, pagan worshippers of many gods as powers from which favors could be propitiated. The Roman and Greek gods were often anthropomorphic, immortals made in man's image, from which concept even the Roman Caesars and Egyptian pharaohs were elevated to the hierarchy of gods. Had Jesus taught and performed His miracles extensively among the pagans, the intermixing of perspectives would surely have handed down the succeeding generations a different view of His teachings. For the message God had given Him to give to the world, He found a perfect harmony in the atmosphere of the wisdom of the Hebrew prophets. India's Advaita Yoga science of God communion and ultimate union with spirit, and the Buddhist emphasis on the law of karma and divine love and compassion for all beings. Certainly, He had enough opposition to balk in the priestly case of Israel without also confrontations with pagan priestly hierarchy. Jesus knew that the concentrated power of His teachings would go forth in its own time to the furthest reaches of human hearts through the instrumentality of His spiritually blessed and well-indoctrinated apostles and their succession of sincere followers. This is the pattern of all God's divine messengers. They are born in a particular place at a particular time and establish their influence in the locale decreed by God, be it communal or universal. Each dispensation bears its own stamp of the will of God. Among the divine emissaries who have blessed and enlightened mankind may be noted the following, whose special dispensations were relative to their predecessors. Bhagavan Krishna appeared in India many centuries before Jesus to redeem the virtuous Pandava people of India, who were oppressed by the wicked Kurus. He was a Purnavatara, full incarnation of divinity, able to manifest all of the qualities of God in His life. Through the sage Vyasa, He gave to India and to the world one of the greatest scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, the yoga science of the soul and its path to liberation in spirit. Later, Gautama Buddha incarnated in India when the message of mercy was sorely needed. It has been said of him that he restored the heart of the religion of India, which had degraded into priestly practices of rituals and mechanical ceremonies. He emphasized the law of righteous action as the way to escape the ever-rotating karmic wheel of birth and death, as also the necessity of developing compassion for all creatures by feeling the presence of divinity in all life. Through Buddha's influence, many animal sacrifice rites were stopped. 5 centuries after Buddha, Jesus Christ appeared to bring the message of faith and devotion for attaining the kingdom of heaven. By His performance of miraculous healings of the bodies, minds, and souls of so many, He demonstrated the ever-present divine love and forgiveness of God to be had by all who mistake themselves receptive. Who make themselves, not mistake themselves. That's important. In the 7th century AD, Swami Shankara incarnated to bring the teachings of the Supreme Spirit as ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. This positive conception of God was much needed for the over-intellectualized classes of India, who, through a corruption of Buddhist teachings, had developed a doctrine of annihilation as the ultimate end of life. This fallacy arose from a misinterpretation of the idea of nirvana, the cessation of ego consciousness, and its consequent reincarnations. The real teachings of Buddha, in accord with all great prophets of India, was that egotistic desires cause rebirth, and that any soul who overcomes material desires finds liberation, not extinction. Swami Shankara reasserted the eternal truth that a soul who overcomes material desire becomes united to the positive state of ever-existing, ever-conscious, ever-new bliss. He pointed out that God's Spirit is the new ever-new bliss, is that ever-new bliss, and as such is a universal necessity and the highest goal of life, to be sought through discrimination and meditation on the inner self, the secret shrine of the blissful, infinite spirit in man. In the 12th century, Sri Chaitanya came in India to ignite in men's hearts an ardent love for God. His path of bhakti, or all-surrendering devotion, restored the primacy of actually experiencing a personal relationship with God, a concept deemed by the abstrusely philosophizing pundits and scholars who demeaned. Let me read that again. His path of bhakti, or all-surrendering devotion, restored the primacy of actually experiencing a personal relationship with God, a concept demeaned by the abstrusely philosophizing pundits and scholars who influenced the practice of religion at that time. In the modern era, Mahavatara Babaji gave to the world through Lahiri Mahasaya the Kriya Yoga science with its techniques of concentration and meditation by which God contact can be realized. Lahiri Mahayasaya, I'm sorry about that pronunciation, emphasized that religionists should rise above their superficial differences, concentrate on the universal principles of morality, and learn the science and art of interiorizing the mind and tuning it with the infinite. His doctrine of Kriya Yoga is unique in the fact that apart from the advice of moral culture and self-discipline, it gives definite techniques of meditation for step-by-step ascension of self to self-realization. Through attainment of universally experienced successive states of superconsciousness, Christ consciousness, and cosmic consciousness, the soul ultimately merges in the Supreme Being. The consciousness of the followers of all religions, by whatever means, must pass through these states to attain God union. Lahiri Mahasaya's teachings is specially suited to the modern age because it does not ask anyone to believe dogmatically, but rather to practice of the proven techniques of Kriya Yoga to discover by personal realization the answer to the eternal question, what is truth about oneself and God? The above masters or saviors had progressed through the different degrees of manifestation of God's qualities. It is when masters are fully or almost fully spiritually developed that they come on earth through the will of God to carry out his special dispensations. God himself, as God, comes down to dwell on earth in a human body. By definition, the illimitable infinite cannot be confined to any one form with its inherent limitations. An essential equality exists among all masters who have fully regained God consciousness within themselves, but they are sometimes differentiated according to their qualitative and quantitative works on earth. Masters are distinguished qualitatively according to the number of souls that they have helped to elevate to Christhood, and quantitatively according to the number of people they have inspired during their stay on earth. Jesus created 11 masters from his 12 disciples. Lahari Mahayasaya, I don't know how to pronounce that name, similarly created many masters. One of them was my God realized guru, Sri Yukteswari. Thus we see that Jesus said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, in order to declare the incipient unfoldment of God's grand design for Jesus' special dispensation on earth, and not because of any narrow partiality to the Israelites. John the Baptist's declaration, but that he should be made manifest to Israel, therefore I am come baptizing with water, John 1 verse 31, confirmed that Jesus' divine consciousness was to be revealed first to the Israelites. His spiritual influence as a world savior was both qualitative and quantitative, to work first for the awakening of those who lived in the land of his birth at that time, especially in a qualitative way for liberating the advanced souls who were his close disciples, and second, by his teachings, example, and omnipresent blessings to inspire on the path to God realization all people for all time. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. Meat, M-E-E-T. It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Matthew 15, verses 25 through 28. Let the divinely ordained children, the Israelites, be first spiritually served by me, according to the will of God. So this is his interpretation of that. Yoganonda. Let the divinely ordained children, the Israelites, be first spiritually served by me, according to the will of God. During the short period I am on earth, it is not fitting for me to offer the bread of divine consciousness to any of the more materially minded peoples whose pagan beliefs seek only the miracles of physical healing, not the spiritual transformation of consciousness. We see that a lot in the world right now. Jesus realized his lifetime was too short to give of his divine consciousness to broader arenas of an unready world. He must first serve those whose spiritual background made them more receptive and whose good karma had attracted the grace of God. Nevertheless, when the woman, who was a Greek, Syro-Phoenician by nation, displayed the sincerity of her eagerness, he did not refuse to heal her daughter. To her he said, O woman, the pulling power of your will and conviction draws the all-healing cosmic energy from me. So let your will be fulfilled. Go your way, and you will find that the cosmic energy, roused by your faith and my will, has dislodged the evil spirit from the life of your daughter. And again, departing from the coast of Tyre and Sidon, he came into the Sea of Galilee, through the midst of the coast of Decapolis. And they bring unto him one that was deaf, and had an impediment to his speech. And they beseech him to put his hand upon him. And he took him aside from the multitude, and put his fingers to his ears. And he spit, and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed, and saith unto him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And straightway his ears were opened, and the string of his tongue was loosed, and he spake plain. And he charged them that they should tell no man, but the more he charged them, so the more a great deal they published it, and were beyond measure astonished, saying, He hath done all things well. He maketh both the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. Mark 7, verses 31 to 37. And Jesus departed from thence, and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee, and went up into a mountain, and sat down there. And great multitudes came to him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. Insomuch that the multitude wondered, when they saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to be whole, the lame to walk, and the blind to see, and they glorified the God of Israel. Matthew 15:29-31. By the divinely charged power flowing as nectarous energy into my mouth from the astral reservoirs of cosmic life force within me, infusing my whole body and empowering the liberation, the vibration of my words, and by my sigh of the almighty breath of life, I absorb within me your evil karma and its resultant effects of your sorrow and sickness. I have commanded the all-healing heavenly energy to fall upon you and your brain and send the healing vibrations to loosen up the defective auditory and speech nerves. Be healed. Masters are able to control all physical, astral, and spiritual processes of the body. They know various methods for generating and concentrating divine power in their bodies to surcharge themselves or to be used as projected vibrations to heal others or to manifest some supernatural phenomenon. Transmuting the atoms of breath into all-powerful life-tronic energy is one such means. Looking up to heaven into the spiritual eyes, he sighed. Another technique known to advanced yogis causes a divine nectar of tremendous power to be secreted into the throat. It enables accomplished yogis to remain in motionless, ecstatic states for prolonged periods of time, with their bodies spiritually electrified with vibrant power. This nectarous energy is also one means by which they can sustain their bodies with little or no food, as has been demonstrated by great saints and yogis. Man shall not live by bread alone. And a master of the supreme stature of Jesus, this powerful secretion can be summoned by willpower to divinely charge any process of the body, as also his spittle to be a medium of healing. Other examples of this are recorded in Mark 8, verses 22-26, and John 9, verses 6-7. It is likely that Jesus used this concentrated nectar of astral energy in these unusual healings, as he himself had noted. Otherwise, it was an abominable offense worthy of damnation for one even to say to another, "Raka, I spit on you." This same principle employed by Jesus of transmission of divine power, concentrated in the mouth, well in the hands and feet and eyes of a master, is the basis of the tradition in India, that any remnant of food left uneaten by a divine personage, or food given to someone by him from the plate from which he has eaten, is considered prasad, imbued with blessings. Then Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me 3 days now, and have nothing to eat. And I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples say unto him, When should we have so much bread in the wilderness as to fill so great a multitude? And Jesus said unto them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7, and a few little fish. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and he gave thanks, and he brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full. And they sat and did eat. There were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coast of Magdala. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came, and tempting desired him that he would shew them a sign from heaven. He answered and said unto them, When it is evening, ye say, It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather. Today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the fate of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given, but the signs of the prophet Jonah. And he left them and departed. Matthew 15, verses 32 through 16:4. O you hypocrites, you can read on the face of the sky whether the weather will be good or evil, yet you cannot read in my life the obvious signs of the times, the divine message given to a man in this present age. As ignorant people cannot discern the weather in the countenance of the sky, so the wicked generation has lost its spiritual vision and cannot recognize the divine sign already given to you, evidenced in the miraculous works of God performed through me. Jesus signified that the miracles worked through him by God were ample sign and testimony of God's approval and commission of him. By his reference to Jonah, he also prophesied about his own coming ritual and resurrection 3 days after death, which would prove his immortality and divine heritage for all time and all people. Jesus, being human as well as divine, felt deep sorrow, envisioning the misery that his wicked contemporaries would have to go through because of their bad karma and refusal to be spiritually cleansed by him. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Then Jesus said unto them, Take heed, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, Is it because we have taken no bread? It is because we have taken no bread. Which when Jesus perceived, he said to them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because ye have brought no bread? Do you not understand yet? Neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000, how many baskets ye took up? Neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000, and how many baskets ye took up? How is it that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Matthew 16, 5-12. O beloved disciples, why do you, by the confusion of your rationalizing mental restlessness, confound your faith, your self-realization born of meditation, so that you fail to understand through your all-seeing intuition what I say? Why do you not feel my words in your intuition and then understand it in your reason? Why have you so little divine conviction that you worry about material bread when you have already witnessed how the divine in me fed multitudes with a few loaves? I would not be warning you about the leaven of the bread of the Pharisees and Sadducees. It is of their false doctrines that you must be aware, which are not the pure bread of life that you find in my teachings. Their specious religious dogmas and customs sicken with ignorance one's spiritual life. And he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him, and besought him to touch him. And he took the blind man by the hand, and led him out of the town. And when he spit on his eyes, and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. And he looked up, and said, I see men as trees, walking. After that, he put his hands again upon his eyes, and made him look up. And he was restored, and saw every man clearly. And he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town, nor tell it to anyone in the town. Mark 8, verses 22-26. Jesus would not heal the man inside the town of Bethsaida, or permit the man to testify to the healing in that town, because Bethsaida had rejected Jesus. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that name at that time. Woe unto thee, Bethsaida, for if the mighty works which were done in you had been done in Tyre or Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the day of judgment than for you. Jesus felt every particle in his body, including his sputum, charged with the high voltage of all healing cosmic energy. He took the divinely charged secretion from his mouth and applied it to the eyes of the blind man, and electrified them with a positive negative current flowing from his hands. Then Jesus asked him if he saw clearly. The man replied, I see men as walking trees. Then Jesus gave a second healing to the man's eyes, and told him to look up at the point between the 2 eyebrows where the spiritual eye is located. When the blind man lifted his eyes, he made a contact with the cosmic energy, which flowed from the single divine eye into his 2 eyes, healing them completely so that he saw every man clearly. Okay, so that was Discourse 44. And I'll do a different live tomorrow on Discourse 45. Peter's inspired recognition of the Christ and Jesus' transfiguration. Okay, that's us all. Christ is King. How do I end this? I don't know. How do we do this? How do we do this? How do I end this, guys? Do I hit add? Start a poll? No. Oh Lord, how do I end this? Okay, what book are you reading? Oh, my book is the Second Coming of Christ, the Resurrection of the Christ Within You, a revelatory commentary on the original teachings of Jesus by Paramahansa Yoganonda. And I'm totally inept when it comes to YouTube. So I don't know how to end this now. You guys might have to hang out with me all day. What is this thing? Welcome to live chat. Oh, thank you. That's not it. Quick share? Do I quick share it? Guys, what the heck? Oh my Lord, it can't be this hard. Do I just hit X? That might be the thing. Okay, X. Bye. Yes, I'm sure. See you guys later.